I was driving home late that night after a work trip I hadn't even wanted to take. The company forced me into it. 4 hours each way, mostly deserted highways, and my return trip had gotten delayed by an accident earlier in the day. By the time I finally hit the stretch of old Route 87, it was past midnight. That part of the road is notorious. Miles of cracked pavement winding through dense pine forests, almost no cell service, and hardly any traffic. The state had built a newer highway years ago, and most people avoided Route 87 unless they were lost or out of options. I guess I was both. The first sign something was off came when I noticed a pair of taillights far ahead of me. At first, I was relieved. I hadn't seen another car in almost 40 minutes. But the relief turned into confusion as I got closer. The car wasn't moving. It was just parked there, dead center in the lane. Hazard lights off, headlights off. I slowed down instinctively, scanning the shoulder for any sign of someone walking, maybe needing help. But there was no one. The car looked abandoned. Its windows were tinted so dark I couldn't even see inside. My high beams washed over the faded paint and showed what looked like deep scratches along the back door, as if something heavy had clawed at it. I pulled to a crawl and passed on the opposite lane. As I drove by, my stomach dropped. The driver's side door was open about 2 inches, slowly rocking back and forth in the cold wind. No one inside. No footprints in the frost on the pavement. Just silence and that door swaying like a slow pendulum. I didn't stop. Every instinct in me screamed not to. A mile later, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The car was gone. I almost veered off the road, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. But no, there were no turnoffs, no driveways, nowhere that car could have gone in the seconds since I'd passed it. My chest tightened, and I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Then, maybe 5 minutes later, headlights appeared behind me. Relief washed over me for half a second, until I realized they were way too close, blindingly close. High beams cutting into my mirror, staying right on my bumper no matter how fast I went. I tapped my brakes lightly. No reaction. I sped up. So did they. Heart pounding, I tried to wave them around me, flashing my blinker toward the shoulder. But the car stayed glued to me. No license plate I could see. Just those harsh white lights filling my mirror and my skull. The road curved, and for an instant I caught a glimpse of the driver's silhouette. Whoever it was, they were sitting completely still, head perfectly forward, hands at 10 and 2, not moving, not even blinking. I floored it. The next 10 miles were a blur of screaming tires and blind corners. I blew through stop signs, ignored the speedometer, praying I wouldn't hit a deer. Finally, I spotted an old gas station sign glowing faintly in the distance, the first sign of civilization in hours. I whipped into the lot, gravel spraying. The car behind me didn't follow. It passed by the station and disappeared into the night. Shaking, I stumbled inside the gas station, babbling to the half-asleep cashier about what I'd seen. He just stared at me for a long moment and said quietly, "People see that car out there every couple years. No one ever sees where it goes." I wasn't supposed to be alone that weekend. The cabin was meant for 4 of us. Me, my girlfriend, and 2 of our friends. A last-minute escape for the city, a weekend of cheap wine, board games, and snowshoeing around the lake. But at the last minute, everyone bailed. I'd already paid for the cabin and requested the time off work. Against my better judgment, I decided to go alone. I told myself it would be peaceful. The first day was fine. I hauled firewood, cooked a simple dinner, watched the snow fall through the giant windows. No cell signal, but I expected that. The silence was thick, but bearable. Night fell around 5 p.m. That's when things shifted. I was chopping vegetables when I heard footsteps crunching in the snow outside. At first, I thought maybe my friends had changed their minds and come up after all. I ran to the window. Nothing. The sound stopped. I stood there for a long minute, holding my breath, straining to hear anything else.
Finally, I convinced myself it was an animal, probably a deer. An hour later, I went to light the firewood. When I opened the wood box by the door, there was something inside that hadn't been there earlier. A wet glove. Old, leather, stiff with ice. I didn't own gloves like that. That night, I barely slept. Every time I drifted off, the wind would shift, and I'd swear I heard someone moving outside. At 3 a.m., I finally got up and peeked through the curtains toward the lake. There were footprints in the fresh snow. A single trail leading from the tree line to the cabin's front porch and back into the woods. Morning couldn't come fast enough. I planned to leave, but the snowstorm trapped me in. Roads impassable. Radio dead. By the second night, I'd barricaded the door with furniture. Around midnight, tapping started on the windows. Soft at first, then louder. Always moving, from one window to the next. I couldn't see anything out there, just endless snow and shifting shadows. Finally, I screamed, "Whoever you are, leave me alone!" The tapping stopped. A pause. Then, from the other side of the cabin, a voice, hoarse, whispering, mimicked me. "Leave me alone." I didn't sleep again. By dawn, the storm had cleared. I fled down the mountain on foot, following the road until I found a ranger station. When they drove me back up to retrieve my car, the ranger went pale at the sight of the cabin. On every window, written in smeared frost, were the words, "You should have left last night."
I used to love thunderstorms. Growing up in the suburbs, storms meant sitting by the window with hot chocolate, counting the seconds between lightning and thunder. But after what happened on Willow Street last year, I can't stand the sound of rain. It was late September, one of those weird nights where the air feels electric hours before the storm even starts. My neighborhood was quiet. Rows of old houses, tall maples lining the street, everything drenched in yellow streetlight. I was home alone. My parents were out of town, and I'd been planning a solo movie marathon. Around 10 p.m., the wind picked up, rattling the windows. By 10:30, the power went out. Total blackout. No hum of the fridge, no glow from the streetlights, just darkness so thick it felt physical. I grabbed my phone flashlight and checked the breaker box. Nothing wrong there. I texted a couple neighbors. No one replied. When I stepped onto the porch, I realized it wasn't just my house. The entire street was dark. Then I saw him. At the far end of the block, a man stood perfectly still in the middle of the road. Just a silhouette against the faint lightning in the distance. I froze. He didn't move for what felt like a full minute. Then, slowly, he started walking toward me. I backed into the house, locked the door, and killed the flashlight. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Minutes passed. Silence. Then, footsteps on my porch. Soft at first, then heavier. A scraping sound, like fingernails against wood. I hid in the kitchen, clutching a knife I'd grabbed without thinking. The footsteps circled the house, back and forth, pausing at each window. When the first boom of thunder hit, lightning lit up the living room, and I saw his face pressed against the glass. White eyes, too wide, lips pulled into a grin that didn't move when the lightning faded. I ran to the bathroom, locked myself inside, and dialed 911. No signal. For the next hour, I listened as he moved from window to window, tapping, whispering things I couldn't make out. Once, I swear I heard him try the doorknob, giggling when it wouldn't turn. When the power finally flickered back on, I braced myself for what I'd see. Every window in the house was covered in smeared handprints, oily, black, like soot. No footprints outside, no sign of forced entry.
The police came, searched the street, found nothing. They told me maybe it was a prank, but I'll never forget those white eyes staring in through the glass.